Hi everybody, it's Lace, and in Friday's live stream for R53, we saw some really super high price stuff on the vendor, on a random vendor in a random scene, and I wanted to do a couple videos, one about shopping, but that's not this one, and then one about what it takes to actually craft something. This is to give an appreciation for the shopper, but also for you crafters out there. It's kind of all the things you should be aware of and doing when you're crafting. The first and foremost is when you're crafting gear, you want it to come out exceptional because it adds durability so that when you go around and you're masterwork and enchanting it, it's going to last longer, and the durability hits that you take from the masterwork and enchanting process don't affect the gear so much so that, it does last longer. And of course, the first place to start is with your devotional buffs. And there's three. There's compassion, sacrifice, and valor. Getting those, and I have them labeled here in our town. So compassion's tailoring, sacrifice carpentry, and then valor's for blacksmith. Using that in a good station and a good tool is going to up your exceptional chance in getting it. Starting out is probably around 25-26%, and that's with no, that's with your basic blacksmithing skill, and that is the skill that helps it. So if I look at my skills and I go into blacksmithing, mine's 100. Now, I believe upping the skill to say 120 should also give you a shot at upping your exceptional success chance, but it's going to be quite a bit of XP. It's not something I'm focusing on right now because I typically just make 100 of something, or 20 or 40 or whatever I'm making of the item, and get my exceptionals, which is around 30% or so. The other things that are important in your basic crafting, again, are tools. And at our crafting school, just right outside there, there's a display that has all the different types of tools that you can create in the game. And then that way you can see the stats, and then there's a book about that on the crafting school. We've kind of covered that in other videos. And then the third thing that's going to help affect your success rates and your exceptional chances and your skill levels and things like that is the station itself. Now, stations that have these little tiny flags on them like this, they're going to denote that they're benefactor or founder, and the flags are a little different between the two. But benefactor and founder both have the same stats, so you don't have to worry about that. But using one of those over the plain ones that are just in NPC towns is going to help you a lot. Now, even if you live in an NPC town or you don't have a place to live, look around the NPC towns. You'll find a lot of places, guilds and stuff, that have crafting pavilions just like this, and they're open use. So you can use their stations and get those bonuses. You don't need to craft in an NPC town where you're using a more inferior station. Just look around and find a place, even if you don't have a guild, even if you don't have a home. There's plenty of these places set up in the world that you can use. So next up, let's talk about enchanting. Enchanting's done on an alchemy station. If I hit K for skills and go into alchemy, to get this, to get to enchantment, we need to have alchemy at level 40, which I do, of course. And then you'll have to go to a crafting trainer. And again, crafting trainers are in a lot of the NPC towns that have a crafting pavilion type area. That's usually where you'll find them. Owl's Head, Exeter come to mind, and stuff. And there's plenty of, or Doris I think has one too. But there's plenty of them to find around the world, and that's where you're going to need to train all your skills up and stuff as you become more proficient in all the different types of crafting. Anyway, getting back to enchantment. So once I get this to 40, I can train this, and then there's sub-specializations which require this to be at 50. And the same thing's true for like masterwork. You will get your you will get your blacksmithing up, let's say, and then there's repair and salvage that you can do. But the important one that we'll be talking about today is masterwork, and again, that requires this to be at 40. And when you're doing salvaging, and before you've even trained this, that'll bump that up to 40 in no time. That's a easy way to get that up there. And then you can see I've started taking my masterwork up higher, and I'll get into that when I get into the masterwork. But then once I get that one up there, once I get that one to 50, then I can start doing my subs. So they work kind of the same way. Getting back to enchanting yet again. So with enchanting, this particular skill right here determines my success rate, and I've taken it to 120, which is a buttload of XP that I've put into it. The reason that I had done this was because when we're getting to that third enchantment with the ring, with the station and all that, I now have a 50% chance. And new in R53, hit I for inventory, this ring now we can see it has +5 alchemy enchantment, and this is one of the artifact rings, and I use one for each masterwork, and then now I'm using this one for my enchantment to help me get that greater increase in percentage chance of success. It is less vital now to perhaps have this at 120 than it was prior to R53, and the reason for that is prior to R53, when you failed, you lost the item. And that's why we see so many super expensive pieces of equipment on vendors. Because for those crafters, they had to pass the RNG test 3 times on enchantment, 3 times on masterwork to get a 3-3 quote-unquote item. And the odds of that are super, super low when you start adding everything together, and every failure, you couldn't fail anything. Starting in R53, if you fail, you don't lose the item anymore. Instead, it just takes a durability hit. And sometimes that's not too costly. It's going to depend on the type of piece of equipment it was. So like a chest is -25. That's pretty hefty, but a chest starts out with a lot more durability. And then when you're in masterworking it, you have a chance to add some durability. And again, we'll get into that. So it's not as cost prohibitive now to try to get a third masterwork or a third enchantment on gear as of R53. So your 3-3 gear items should start to come down in price because the risk and absorbing the cost of doing it is going to go down for the crafters. You're still going to see a lot of it super high priced because the crafters had that risk when they made it. And I don't know that they will ever go back and adjust their prices. They might have to because the market's going to drop in price. It really is. I'm selling it way cheaper than I was because I didn't lose 15 items to get 1 or 2 to a 3-3. And so the same thing's going to be true. Now, it's a little bit less durability for the consumer. And again, we'll go over that in the shopping video. But that price point's reflected to everybody because we didn't lose the items. The next thing to talk about here in Enchanting is to set some player expectations. Okay, so this one, not too bad. Every time you enchant something, it's going to suck some XP from your pool. Now look how low my pool is. Super, super low. Because I was doing some training and stuff on like that. And I also had on, I happen to have this potion on, this obsidian potion of guidance. And I had that on for hunting purposes, but I was using it in my crafting to suck my pool down. So it's super low. The larger this pool is, and this is true in crafting and in hunting, the more XP gets applied to each combine or each time you swing a sword or whatever. And then using this potion here makes even more come in. If you're being mentored, like we do at our crafting events, it sucks more in. This is hugely important in Enchanting because these two sub here, weapon and armor, while they only take one about, it's like the 1.2 million or whatever that every basic skill is that isn't an innate hunting skill or isn't a refining efficiency skill. It's just still the 1.2. The amount that is naturally absorbed per combine is super, super low. So you'll masterwork something you use far less silver for one type of masterwork to GM than you will for the weapon enchantment and the armor. And it kind of makes sense because for the silver ones, for the masterworks, there's a billion of them. There's cloth, there's leather, there's swords, there's polearms, there's ranged, there's all these different ones. So there's a bunch of those. So if you add up 1 million, 1.2 million times all that, it's quite a bit of XP. And for Enchanting, there's only 2. So it makes sense that they're sucking in less. However, using a potion like this, once you have a really big pull, don't spend these potions when you only have 1 million or something and expect it to really help your crafting. It's not. Build the pool. I know it's super hard to resist not spending that XP, but try to resist before you use a potion like this. Now, if you're doing crafting mentoring, fine, whatever. But again, the biggest bang for your buck is going to come when this pool is, I think the sweet spot's around 6 million. Um, and that's keeping it at 6 million. So you'd want to go to 7.2, take it back down to 6 million to do 1 GM. And that means you'll have to do fewer combines to get this to GM. At around 7.2, and you spend that 1.2, it'll be back to 6, but you'll have a GM far quicker. The exception is, though, however, this one, where even at that higher one, you're still going to use a ton of ore. I think somebody said, not being mentored, because when it was very first new, there wasn't really anybody that could mentor folks in this to where it would suck in more. It was like 38,000 pieces of ore. That's for each one. That's huge. But again, if you build this pool up, use one of these potions, and are being mentored, it's going to drop dramatically. Because what are these potions like? I don't know. 300%. So it's 3 times the amount. So you could probably divide that 38,000 by 3, I guess, if my math's right. And so it'd be, I don't know, what was that, 12? A little over 12,000 pieces of ore versus 38. Much better for you just to get it up to GM. And again, getting this up to GM, so this particular skill affects my success chance. This is the strength of the enchant. And I'm going to talk about the strength of enchants and masterwork when I get to masterwork, because it's a little more important, and I'm actually shifting my personal philosophy on this. Well, I guess I can say it now. So while I was going for success chance prior to R53 because I hated losing the gear, now it's going to be more important to me to have the best buffs possible. When I do the first enchantment, I don't know, I'm going to pick one. It's like, let's say 3.1 for strength on something, right? Then when I do the next one, it's 3.2 on, if it happens to be the second enchant on that same strength. If it happens to be the third enchant, it's 3.3. Okay, and that's just basic stats. That's not above 100. That's just at the 100. If it's lower than 100, it's like 3, I think, and it takes a while to go up. But anyway, increasing this increases the strength of the enchants. Same thing, masterworking. Increasing these bottom row things increases the strength. This increases my success chance. This increases the strength of it. So now that we've changed in R53, where this isn't as critical because I'm not going to lose the piece of gear, this is going to be better, where you're going to see the cream of your crop and folks that specialize, let's say in maybe I specialize in weapon enchantment, and maybe I'm doing bows. So if I can go in here and I'm going to specialize in weapons, and I'm going to take this to 120 to where my weapon enchant's stronger, and I'm a bow maker. So in carpentry, let's see, was that ranged, and I take this up. Now I can build a stronger weapon than, say, somebody like me that only has it at 100. So you can see some more diversity in your crafters who specialize in certain areas. I know there's been a big cry for that. It's not fair, everybody can do everything. Well, not everybody can do everything, but not everybody can do everything well without a huge amount of time. Another thing that I get told is, oh my God, you have so many GMs. This is almost 2 years of work, guys. It's not like I just started playing last week and I have these, okay? Now for some of the hunters, there were some areas and some exploits where they got millions of XP per hour. They've capped that. It's only 1 million, and that's still far more than I can get, trust me. And that's after almost 2 years of playing, in persistence. So don't think that you're just going to suddenly become a master crafter. Now, you can specialize, like I'm showing you here, by one. You don't have to get your success up that high because you're not going to lose it, but it's going to take the durability hit, but it's going to allow more crafters to start getting into these specializations a little bit faster and easier, and still have products to sell that are good. So just to, sum it all off, this is your success chance. Success chance can also be buffed by the rings, like I showed you. And that's also going to be true in masterwork. But the strength, the amount of whatever it is that you're trying to put on the item, like strength, dex, int, and also in enchanting, this is where you can get your strength, dex, and int as a mix, regardless of the armor type. If you're a cloth wearer and you want strength, well, cloth is not typically on when you're trying to masterwork it going to get a strength buff from masterworking. It's typically only going to pop an int. For whatever reason, that's how it is. I think int and dex might pop up over here. And there's no reason why, as a cloth wearer, I shouldn't be able to have a cloth with a lot of strength, because strength is so key to so many things. If I hit C for character and I look at strength, when I mouse over this stat, look, it determines my hit points, my carry capacity, physical damage, not so much important to a caster, resistance and immobilizing effects, well, that is an important thing, and then chance to parry or block. So those are important. So strength, even if you're a caster, strength is important, especially carry capacity and things like that. And I've talked about carry capacity in tactics. Well, there's your health, which is overall health. Get that to 40. Get in there and do your trained strength. Get that to 40. And then get in here to heavy lifter, honey. That is going to save your bacon so that you can stay out in the field longer and be able to carry more things. But based on the enchanting and the masterworking right now, getting strength on cloth is pretty darn difficult. You can only get it over here, not so much here. Conversely, if you're a chain caster, and you can get by in chain casting even with the physical or even with the fizzle rate, getting it on chain is pretty hard, because on the blacksmithing station over here, it's typically going to pop. I believe it's like strength and dex again. The only place that you can get int on chain is through enchanting. So keep these kind of little caveat things in mind when you're building gear. I get requests from folks wanting me to build them gear with certain stats, and I just refer them to other crafters, because quite frankly, the amount of time it would take to try to build a custom set of gear, I could have built 20 other sets, and it's just not worth my time. And probably I'm bitter, because I've built custom sets for people and spent 6 hours building their custom set. They paid me for the materials and gave me 1,000 gold. And I'm like, wow. So bitter party of one, not doing custom sets for folks. It's not happening here. Those that do it, hey, more power to you. But sorry. Usually I try to put a little advertisement in my videos for whatever I'm doing or my town. I'm going to unadvertise and say, don't ask me, because I'm just not going to do it. I got burned too many times and not happening. It's also because we really don't have any control over what pops. That was something that was said in the live stream that I was just like, what? They said on Friday, crafters have far more control. I'm like, what? No, we don't have any control over what pops. And half the time it's like damage resistance that comes up in masterwork. And you're going to find most of your players don't want that, because what happens on the damage resistance, like 12%. Now, if you have it's 12% not of your base damage resistance, it's 12% the damage resistance from that piece of armor. So if it's constructed out of plain leather or plain cloth, there's not much damage resistance in that. 12% of nothing's nothing. So you're basically burning and wasting the masterwork. Again, that's probably more for the masterwork section and stuff, and you can tell how passionate and excited I am about that, about how bad the damage resist things that constantly pop on over here are. It's not your base damage resistance, it is for the item, and again, 12% of nothing's nothing. Let's talk about socketing items. So I can type in socket to see the types of things. So I can do chess, I can do one-handed, which is going to be a one-handed weapon or shield. I can do two-handed, and I can do a ring or amulet / necklace, which is really a necklace, not amulet. And using what I'm going to use for these are gems or jewels. Okay, One diamond will get me one gem, or it will get me two jewels. And there's a bit of a learning curve in learning the mix and match because of the names of these. If I could look for gem. Yeah. So the garnet produces the atronism gem, which is related to sun magic. And then emerald is Gaiism, earth. And then let's see, Luna, onyx is necromancy. Obviously, that's going to be death. That's going to be moon. Sorcery, obviously fire. Tempestry, water. And then diamond is healing. And then citrine is air. So the gems, the types of gems that you find from mining the crystal nodes, you can then use those to turn them into the gems. And it's either going to be a regular gem, which gives attunement, or a warding gem or jewel, which is resistance 2. So if I want to resist sun, I'd want to make one of these. If I want to resist earth, I want to make one of these. If I want to be better at earth, it's one of these. And if I hit K for skills and go to adventuring, there's a little thing here where I can look and see what all my attunement is, kind of as an overhead display. Or if I go into a particular school, I can see what my attunement is. When I mouse over, it's going to tell me, it's going to make my fire skills stronger, and I'm going to be more resistant to fire if, the higher this attunement is. And by putting these gems or jewels on my armor, that's going to bump those numbers. And so you'll find folks that will make sets of gear that are fire resist gear, or water resist gear, or this resist gear. Or if they're using a lot of fire against a certain mob, they might want the attunement gear and stuff. And that's part of why we have so many decks. I say the decks are for outfits, but truly they're for being able to quickly change builds and stat gear and stuff. Now, you can put these gems on before you enchant if you want the chance for it to proc. The procs that happen are based on the particular gem that you socket. So like a sorcerer gem in a sword, I think there's one that's 5% chance to ignite, but it eats 40 durability if that procs and you choose it. I think there's one for weapon speed on the ruby as well. Again, it ate 40 of my durability on the item. So there's a huge trade-off in getting these to proc because of the durability hits. Maybe, I don't know. I feel like some of them, for the proc, they're not that good. I do a lot of necromancy ones on rings and necklaces because it gives the death thing, like drain health or summon undead creature for the onyx on the jewels on the onyx, the jewels for rings and necklaces from onyx and stuff. So they're going to pigeonhole the sales of your gear to only people that are focused in those schools. So I make a lot of gear with no gems because they can still buy the chest piece or the ring or whatever, and they can add the gem that's either going to give them the resistance to a school or the attunement to a school, and it allows it to be sold to more players. I'm not just making a specific type of armor for folks that are earth heavy or fire heavy or water heavy or whatever they are. So keep that in mind when you're crafting your gear. I think it's a good idea to maybe make a few that are socketed ahead of time and try to get the procs. And it's a good idea to make some without any socketing so that after market, the player themselves can go and pick what they want for attunement or warding. And if you're a player out there and you've got some gear that I've made and you bought and you want to add a gem to it, bring me the raw stone or the gem and some mandrake. It's 10 mandrake to make the gem, and then it's 10 mandrake to socket it. So 20 mandrake and a garnet, and I will socket it for you. And stuff, no cost other than the actual material costs and things, and that way you get exactly what it is that you want on that particular piece of armor. I'll do other people's armor that other people have made. Just hit me up, and I'm sure there's plenty of crafters that'll do the same. Hey, I've got the mats, can you socket this for me? Because it's a 2-second thing. It's not a big deal. It's not costing them anything to do this for you. And for me, it's just I made this armor, but I didn't know who was going to buy it and what they'd want, so once you've bought it, hey, come back to me and I'll put in the thing that you want. It won't have the chance for the procs because again, you got to do that first. But again, the procs are pretty durability intensive, and not everybody wants those. Not people might like their things to last a lot longer than to have a 5% chance to cast Deadly Night or something from a Lunism gem. So that's my particular philosophy for doing it that way. So let's take a look at masterwork. I know we've touched on it in the enchanting, but let's look at some masterworking. Again, much like the enchanting is, you'll get your base skill up, which was alchemy, but in this case it's tailoring. Then we will get the masterwork. Once we get this to 40, then we can train this. Once we get this to 50, then we can train the subspecializations. And these affect the strength of the masterwork on the item, and this is your success rate. Again, success rate now is not quite as important because you don't lose the item, but on failure, it now takes a durability hit. So something that, started off at 150, if you keep failing, is very quickly going to be a short duration time that piece of gear is good for the player. And in my pricing, and we'll go over this in shopping, I price based on not only the number of enchants or masterworks, but also based on the durability. Something that has a lot longer durability, I'm going to price higher than something that has lower. Regardless, so let's say it's a 2-2, 2 masterwork, 2 enchant. High durability, 1 price. Lower durability, I have to sell that much lower because I have to think about the consumer and what its value to them. If it's only going to last them 3 weeks versus 6 weeks, that's going to be reflected in the price. And again, right now, we've got tons of overpriced gear out there for sale because based on the old system, only a perfect success rate was able to be sold. Everything else was destroyed. And again, it will take a while for the economy to catch up, and from your crafters adjusting their prices because they're not having to absorb so many failures and stuff. Much like enchanting, where enchanting, once we got the base skill of enchanting to 98, we had the ability to add durability effectiveness. We have the ability to add durability. This durability is going to be plus 30 on chests and legs and plus 15 on gloves, boots, hats. Each of these items start out with a different base durability, but again, having as much durability on the item allows you to enchant it more and make it last longer for your consumer. Now, again, for me as a crafter, I put far more emphasis on the enchantments than the masterworks because the masterworks, again, are so limited where it's constantly popping the damage resistance instead of like a stat bonus. And then some of them, like hats, can get a focus regen. Gloves can get a parry, or not a parry, a flurry, or even our boots can get like a move rate or attack speed on gloves. These are some of the things that can pop up in masterwork. The really good ones that are going to pop up in masterwork are going to be in your weapons, which are going to be in their blacksmithing or carpentry, and you can get a +8 strength. Now, you know that there's components that can drop in the world from salvaging. Most common are the elven bowstrings from salvaging elven bows, and those can add like a dex bonus to the, the bowstring will add a base when you build that bow of dex. Ashen wood is a component that you can get from reapers, ashen heartwood, and you can use those to make like staves and bows, or staves and wands. And those, I can't remember what the stat is, but I know it was good. Those are going to cost a little more because it's a component drop. And then there's like hilts that you can get, and sometimes bandit blades, where when you make a sword from these hilts or blades, there's base strength stats or something, or weapon damage or whatever it is from the components. And those naturally go into the item you're creating, which just give it even more stats. Another good example are the different hats that you can make: bear hat, boar hat, stag hat, wolf hat. These all come with an inherent stat of strength or int or dex or dexin. I think there's one that has dex and strength as a combo. I think that's the boar, the latest one. So these give some base stats to the item, and then through masterworking you might get lucky, get to add a little bit more stat, but again, it seems to be based on the armor type, cloth, leather, or metal, that dictates what stat it is. So trying to get that really hybrid cloth heavy strength thing is mostly just going to again come from enchanting, not from masterworking. But on weapons, getting that +8 strength, wow, super nice. Even if you're a caster, and you can get a +8 strength, and maybe you use 2 daggers or something, that would be awesome. Because look how much more stuff you can carry. I don't know if I've ever gotten a dagger with it, but I know I've gotten swords with the +8 and pole arms and spears and things like that. Doesn't always proc, but when it does, I charge more because, that's really added a ton of stats to that item. So yeah, I've made like +16 dex items or strength items and stuff just based on what happened to randomly roll. But, those are pretty uber weapons and stuff. I just wish the damage resistant would pop less and more stats and less DR. But, I know. I keep saying that and whining, but that's how it is. Anyway, I put less focus on the masterwork than I do the enchantments because I'm looking for the stats. Damage resist and damage avoidance. I'll take the avoid because that one's actually not too bad. It's not a percentage. It's a count, unlike the percentage thing. So damage avoidance isn't bad, and you can pick that up in your armor and stuff when you're crafting it. It doesn't matter whether it's chain or plate or leather or cloth. That damage avoidance is nice. It's not a bad one when it pops. I don't cry out. I mean, I'll still take other things over that, but I won't cry about that one, like, unless I'm stuck with damage resist or something stupid for my choices. The other thing to mention regarding masterworking and of weapons is when you're doing the weapons, you get a little bit better choices than the armor that's all DR. You can get the skills that are based on that particular weapon school. So for like pole arms, I might get 15% more skewer damage, or 15% more spinning attack. For swords, I might get 15%, and I'm just making up a flat number. Again, this dictates the strength of the masterwork. So if I'm doing swords, like this one's at 103 for blade weapons, let's pretend it's 120, my strength of the rend damage, maybe it starts out at 14.7, I want to say, something like that, at around 100, or at around a little under 100. Then I can get that up to higher, to maybe it's 16%. And again, based on which positional number the masterwork occurred, the first one might be 14.7, and the second one's 14.9, and the third one's 15.1. If it's my third masterwork on the weapon, then if that one's going to be a little bit stronger than if it happened to occur in the first position. So when you're masterworking, try to go for durability first, because it doesn't eat the durability, bumps the durability, makes it more enchantable, and then put your either your stat things, strength, dex, int, if those pop in the second and third position, or the second, third time you masterwork or enchant it, and then also with your particular skills, put them in the second and third. So durability first if you can. Doesn't always occur that way, and you never know if you'll even get a durability, but kind of plan that out. Also, it's a good idea as a crafter to understand every weapon style. Know which skills are popular with players. I know rend is pretty popular. I know spinning attack and a polearm is going to be pretty popular because it hits multiple targets and stuff, and if they're using it. I know in bows that the rapid fire is super popular. So knowing the skills that can pop in your masterwork, and then being able to, pick one over another. So like if I saw, I don't know, skewer and spinning attack, I'd pick spinning attack over the other one. So I know this has been pretty long, but I wanted to really just talk about all the little intricacies that goes into crafting not only for crafters, and give them some tips and tricks and things, buffs and stations and tools and the order in which you do things and stuff like that, but also for you guys as a consumer to understand what goes into it, so that when I get to the shopping part, you can truly evaluate what it is that you're buying. Your shopping isn't just going to be bing, bing, boom, I buy a +9. You need to look at the stats. And as the crafter, you need to build the stats that people want, and that are the most popular. And that's very specific in weapons, in masterwork. And it's also important in the armor masterwork, because you can really make some poor choices, because we have some poor choices. And then also in enchantment, knowing when to use durability effectiveness, knowing when to pick maybe a stat over another stat based on the armor type, uh, making some differently built items for, be a small niche community that might want strength on cloth. But you're going to find there's going to be players that want that instead of just going the whole int route. These are all things to consider. You could even bill yourself as the, perhaps the crafter that makes things a little bit differently to give those folks that want cloth with strength, or those folks that want int on decks, or those folks that want int on chain, or something like that, by making different choices in your crafting process. And then you guys as consumers can then, maybe look to them. Maybe that's how they build themselves on the player marketplace and stuff. Also, as consumers, go to the player marketplace and, you'd be surprised what you can find there. Again, more of the shopping part, which we will get into and mention again in the next video. But I really hope this has been helpful in teaching you a little bit more about building better gear so that more people will want to buy your gear. And then also as a consumer, understanding that you're not going to get something perfect. Being able to take something a little different's okay. Take care, everybody. Happy hunting and be safe.